Hey everybody, welcome to video 26. Hopefully you started to get a feel for how these video lectures are going to go from video 25 as we look at some of the major muscles of the human body. Because today we start to dive in to the muscles of the torso. So here we can see the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle that is under both voluntary and involuntary control, which makes it very special for the skeletal muscles. So you can see here, this is an inferior view. So this is like we are looking up towards the head at the diaphragm. You can see the sternum on the front here. So that would be the anterior side. The vertebrae on the back here being the posterior side. And you can see this diaphragm muscle runs all the way around here. Basically, it separates your thoracic cavity from your abdominal cavity. You do have several openings through your diaphragm. Here you can see the vena cava passing through the caval opening. You have your esophagus passing through that esophageal hiatus. And then down here you have the aorta passing through the aortic hiatus, because without them, you couldn't have blood get to your lower half, or you couldn't have food get to your lower half. So the diaphragm, even though it does separate you into thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity, does need to allow things to be able to move through. So you can see the muscle all along the edge here, and then the central tendon that they are going to all be connected to. That's what's going to allow the diaphragm to all contract and relax as one muscle. Here we have three major muscles that we can take a look at from these views here. The pectoralis major is going to be the large fan muscle of the chest here. We're going to look at its origin and insertion, but all along the sternum here, and it's going to converge up into the shoulder. Your deltoid muscle, shaped because it looks like the Greek letter delta, kind of a triangle shape, is going to be the major muscle of the shoulder. So when you feel your shoulder, you're feeling that deltoid muscle on the lateral side of the joint there. And then the latissimus dorsi, see if I can find it here. Yep, latissimus dorsi, it's cut here, but then you can see it in full view here, is the large muscle of the back. People that work their lats a lot, they do a lot of pulls. It's going to look almost like they have wings connecting the posterior part of their arm to their back, especially if you do a lot of pull-ups. That's really good for your latissimus dorsi muscle. And then also wanted to mention the rotator cuff. The rotator cuff being made of the tendons of several muscles, the subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor, all wrapping around the humeral head here to form that rotator cuff. So if you have any sort of tear to the rotator cuff, it means there is damage to one or more of the tendons of those muscles there. And you can see that infraspinatus, that supraspinatus running through there, the subscapularis, and the teres minor on the underside here. And then just for reference, they include the long head of the biceps right there. So looking at the AOI of these muscles, you can see that pectoralis muscle, pectoralis major, there is a pectoralis minor muscle as well, being used to flex, meaning to bring your arm forward, and to adduct, to bring it towards the midline. So you think that makes sense based on where this muscle is, being able to pull that insertion on the greater tubercle of the humerus towards its origin on the sternum, the clavicle, and ribs 1 through 6. Your deltoid muscle being used to abduct the arm. It is the major abductor of the upper limb. It is going to originate on the clavicle, scapula, and the acromion right here, kind of the point of your shoulder. You can kind of think of it that way. And it's going to insert on the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. So as it inserts onto that humerus and as it pulls that insertion towards the origin, that is going to abduct your arm. Other muscles, you have the rectus abdominis. This is what you think of as the six-pack. It's going to be used to flex the trunk, which means to basically like you would when you reach down and touch your toes. It is going to originate on the pubis bone. Remember, that is going to be the anteromedial portion of your hips. And it's going to insert on your sternum as well as ribs 5 and 7. So that's how it's going to be able to flex your trunk. Your external and internal obliques are going to be used for twisting at the waist. They do run perpendicular. They have the external layer is on top, the internal layer is underneath. That's why they have their names. They're going to originate ribs 5 through 12, as well as on the ilium. Remember, you have that iliac crest that you can feel on your hips. And they're going to insert on ribs 7 through 10, as well as the midline of the abdomen, that linea alba. When you think of the six-pack, it's the vertical line going down the middle, separating the 3 on the right and the 3 on the left, is kind of where that linea albia is going to sit. Your latissimus dorsi, like we mentioned, on the back here is going to be used to extend and adduct the arm. It's going to originate from T7 through L5, so all of your lumbar muscles, or lumbar vertebrae, plus a few of your thoracic. Ribs 9 through 12, as well as the iliac crest, and it's going to insert on the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. And I forgot to grab a humerus bone, but that sits in between the tubercles of the humerus. The rhomboid major is one of the major retractors of the scapula, so it's going to originate on T2 through T5 and insert on that scapula, and that's going to be one of the major muscles that's going to give you your good posture. Diaphragm, like we mentioned, is used for external respiration, breathing in and out. It's going to originate on the sternum, ribs 6 through 12, and the lumbar vertebra. Remember, it's going to encircle everything across your inner cavities there. And they all insert on that central tendon. That is what they are pulling or relaxing. Your external intercostal is going to be used also for respiration, breathing in and out. They're going to originate on whatever rib is superior to them. So if they are in between ribs 1 and 2, they're going to originate on the rib above, rib 1, and insert on the inferior rib or the rib below them. So they pull on those ribs, and that's going to allow your chest cavity to expand really, really big when you need to take a deep breath. And then you have your serratus anterior is going to run on the underside here, kind of anterior to where your latissimus dorsi sits. It's going to be used for shoulder flexion, so to move that arm forward. It's going to originate ribs 1 through 8 and insert on the anterior, so the front surface of the scapula. Serratus anterior is commonly called the puncher's muscle because if it's being used to flex the shoulder, that's what you commonly see is very, very strong in boxers, is because they use that serratus anterior quite a bit. So those are the muscles of the torso. As always, please make sure you are asking questions if you have any and reviewing these as we go along.